So good morning, everybody. My name is Daniel Kuntz. I am the TRADOC Capability Manager of Tactical Radios. Within my portfolio, my team is not only responsible for tactical radios for the United States Army, but we handle all of the requirements documentation for the A-PNT CFT, as well as the network CFT and the tactical ITN layer and other aspects of it. Today, though, I'm going to talk to you about APNT. Go into a little bit about the threat to our GPS systems. Give a little bit of a background on what APNT is. It is not GPS. Yes, some of the letters are the same, but it's not the same concept. It's assured position navigation timing. So we'll kind of go into it a little bit. We'll go over it. We'll have got a couple of cool videos in here and things of that nature to kind of give you an understanding or a concern, and then we'll open it up to discussion points at the end of the process. Here you see the problem. The problem on the bottom, Army forces lack the ability to obtain and use PNT when conditions that impede or denied access to GPS. Electromagnetic interference and enemy jamming and spoofing is the biggest concerns that we have. Our systems are not what they were before. Up until recent years, we've maintained an unchallenged advantage in the use of the global positioning system to ensure position, navigation, and timing information availability to soldiers, systems, and platforms. On this slide, a simple Google search. You can do this on your smartphones. You can see things. GPS spoofing, GPS jamming. 15 years ago, maybe an article talking about a concept. Now, you'll get 20 to 30 pages of information that will pop up if you ask every one of those. It not only affects the military, it affects commerce, it affects transportation, it affects our networks. But today I'm going to focus on how it affects the Army. The bottom line of the slide is right there. We need help in taking care of this threat that looms on the horizon. On this slide here, we'll talk about a couple of aspects of it. This is the OV1 for the APNT system. Understanding the problem is important to finding the solution. My team, in coordination with multiple stakeholders, not only on the APNT, CFT, but also PMPNT and across our sister services and some of our partner nations, have completed a significant level of analysis to support the conclusions and inform the next steps in providing a solution for the military problem. This slide depicts that problem and identifies the attributes of the potential solutions to that problem. As you see on the slide in front of you, the APNT operational view represents Army forces operating in conditions that affect their ability to access GPS position, navigation, and timing type and aspects of it. The background area of the chart is green, yellow, and red. As you can see, this is a permissive environment, low threat, and as we move into a conflict area, it continues to get worse and more complex. Not only a complex threat, but complex operations are elaborated here. The graphics in the center of the chart represent Army forces operating in increasing levels of capability to overcome challenges inherent in each condition level that you see on the right. At the top of each graphic is a label indicating the capability attributes: access, protection, and trust. Those are the attributes we're looking for, not only the ability to access, but understanding and protecting that symbol and trusting it, verifying that that is a legitimate signal that we are receiving in our GPS receivers. The left of the graphic represents PNT service. Up here, obviously, you've got a less permissive environment. Military GPS is pretty easy to get to. But as the threat increases, the ability to get to that military GPS decreases. But with the augmentation of other aspects that we put into the APNT process, we add that protection back in. That's what the designation on the blue and green on the bottom is. All non-GPS sources of augmentation have increased the ability to get to what we need. Could that be an anti-jam antenna? Could it be ComSec instituted in that transmission path, et cetera? So there are ways to get after this process. I'm going to go into a little video to talk about the threat. The threat is a concern. I will point out some areas as we go through it. This particular video was made by TRADOC G2 in 2016, and it is from the Russian point of view on how they look and perceive and how they plan to do their operations against it. It is a concept of a near-peer threat. Any near-peer or peer threat could have the same capability. This capability that will be elaborated here, you'll see looks awful familiar on some of the things that happened in the European theater. So without further ado, we'll go into this a little bit.
Regulation presents some of the challenges U.S. force developers must consider for success on modernized battlefields in future multi-domain environments. Prior to 2020, Russia escalates hostilities toward bordering states, NATO, and the United States. It employs hybrid warfare methods across all parts of the operational environment and gray zones, leading to a sudden invasion of a neighboring state. Russia overwhelms the neighboring state forces with a combined arms ground assault. Pre-positioned Spetsnaz elements directly coordinate support from guerrilla and insurgent forces made up of Russian diaspora. Strategic information warfare aimed at national governments in the region and NATO disrupt the alliance, delaying a coordinated military response. Exploiting the many months it takes U.S. and coalition forces to mobilize and deploy into theater, Russian forces disperse and begin to implement measures to operationally shield ground forces and critical assets. They employ camouflage and deception, including deployment of decoys. They also prepare multiple survivable defensive positions in close proximity to schools, hospitals, and other high-density civilian areas. By repositioning elements from the neighboring military district, including long-range S-400 and S-500 air defense systems, Russia pushes U.S. AWACS, JSTARS, and other theater command and control and intelligence collection platforms well outside their effective ranges. Doing so prevents U.S. and NATO air power from effectively supporting ground forces. It also degrades joint fires while protecting and preserving Russian long-range strike capabilities. The Russians announced that any U.S. or NATO attempts to strike these systems, which are located on Russian soil, will be considered an escalation of the conflict. Concurrent with the release of this statement, Russia conducts an unannounced low-yield nuclear test in the interior of Russia to re-emphasize their willingness and readiness to use tactical nuclear weapons in case of such an escalation. Prior to any attack by U.S. or NATO forces, a Russian brigade with supporting insurgent and guerrilla units prepares an integrated defense to defeat an attack by a U.S. Army Armored Brigade Combat Team, or ABCT. The Russian brigade consists of 3 mechanized infantry battalions and 1 tank battalion with organic anti-tank, air defense, artillery, RISTA with EW, and engineer units, and is augmented with additional rocket, air defense, and anti-tank units. The Brigade AO is divided into a disruption zone and a battle zone, and exploits key terrain. In the disruption zone, the Russians employ unmanned aircraft, forward observers, long-range anti-tank missiles, and supporting forces to locate and track U.S. high-value targets. These include ISR, C2, logistics, and fire systems. The absence of U.S. short-range air defense capability enables Russian unmanned aircraft to track movement and provide targeting data in real time. In the battle zone, Russian forces establish a contact force and a shielding force. Obstacles with advanced anti-tank mines are in place to shape ABCT maneuver the battle over to the shield. Camouflage.
See what happens when you try to keep it from fading out on you?
Are prepared to reposition tactically, handing the battle over to the shielding force. As the ABCT maneuvers deeper into the Russian defense, U.S. sustainment and C2 are increasingly vulnerable to attack. Irregular and regular forces employ direct and indirect fires, including rocket and artillery fires, offensive cyber attack, EW, and obstacles against advancing ABCT elements. Throughout the depth of their formation, the Russians employ defensive EW to degrade GPS-dependent systems. They also use electronic intelligence systems to identify and target U.S. emitters, including C2 communications nodes, counter-battery radars, and air defense radars.
As you just seen and heard in the video, we're focused on multi-domain operations, worst case. The last 18 years, our United States Army has been focused on coin operations in a relatively permissive environment. The world has changed. Well, we've been fighting the war on terror and the coin operations in Iraq and Afghanistan and around the world. Our potential adversaries have been improving and getting better and learning about our systems and understanding the basis of our command control communications, our timing, assured position, navigation, etc. And they have taken steps in order to be prepared in case of a confrontation with us. We are focused on upgrading, modernizing our systems for the multi-domain environment of 2028. That is currently part of it. This is a big component of that fight. I'm going to point out a couple more aspects as we go forward on this. This, of course, is a near-peer competitive fight as a representation of our concerns.
Russia plans to draw U.S. forces to the northern bridge by portraying strength at the center bridge by employing organic infowar systems throughout the battle zone. Russia reinforces this deception by allowing the U.S. reconnaissance troop to secure the northern bridge and advance unimpeded into the battle zone. Russian air defense tracks and destroys U.S. UASs with forwardly deployed 2S-6 and SA-15 systems, degrading U.S. situational understanding. As the U.S. attacks along two avenues of approach, the Russians allow the lead maneuver battalion to continue eastward along its main axis of attack, and a trailing battalion secures the avenue of approach. Insurgents near the North Bridge detonate explosive devices on the west ramp of the bridge, isolating the two battalions from their logistics. Spetsnaz, employing small unmanned aircraft and advanced optics, target CS and CSS units west of the bridge. They request long-range fires from MRL systems and SS-26 Iskander missiles. Simultaneously, Russian EW attacks the U.S. air defense umbrella and counterfire kill chain. At the same time, an insurgent force ambushes a U.S. command post, further disrupting C2. On the center avenue,
the Russians have used EW to compromise ADA and targeting radars. That's what they talked about right there. In this scenario, you talk about counterfire capabilities. We are dependent upon that GPS structure within those particular systems. That type of interference can be because of GPS is such high altitude and a low power, it is easy for them to potentially jam our devices from space. They're extremely low power, and the GPS jammers can be effective over large areas and are difficult to geolocate, especially if the system that's trying to geolocate that threat is dependent on GPS for its position and its GPS to target that threat that it's trying to find. You see how these types of things can concern us to a great extent. I'm going to skip the rest of it right now because of the IT problems and kind of talk to you a bit about the aspects that we're going forward. This is a graphic representation of the MAP system. When we talk about maps, we're talking about a mounted assured position, navigation, and timing system. In the mounted APNT system, it's the integration of multiple sensors mounted on a mounted distribution of PNT, which allows the soldier, platform, and system to access position, navigation, and timing to conduct military operations if there is a GPS degraded condition or jammed position. The mounted APNT system implements an architecture that acquires, protects, and distributes trusted PNT on military platforms. The mounted material solution is modular, scalable form factor that will provide ability to pace the evolution of threat technology. Currently, our mounted platforms have multiple GPS receivers on them that activate and operate independently for the system that they provide that GPS information for. Some of our mounted systems can have multiple GPS receivers on the top of them. You can have GPS receivers that provide not only position, they may provide timing, they may provide that navigational aspect of it. The problem is they all operate independently. In a threat environment, each one of those independents can be receiving different conflicting information. The way we're going forward with this is to integrate those systems into one capabilities and to integrate other things that may be available on that platform. Many of our mounted capacity have inertial navigation systems on board. Some of them have, and we are working towards chip scale atomic clocks that will maintain that timing aspect of the system. So when GPS is there, it will sync. When GPS is degraded or impeded, the other systems will take over and provide that trusted capability. Most importantly, as we integrate those protections within that box, it can tell the operator what they can trust, what they can depend on. If they know GPS is there, all be at, go for it. You've got the accuracy that you need to do the things that you need to do. But if those lights light up and tell you that GPS might be suspect, then maybe you should go to an alternate source of information, be that the chip scale atomic clock, be it the inertial navigation, or other aspects of it. We're trying to put this all within one system to provide a more trusted APNT source. You see on the right side there, this is just a representative sample of some of the things that are available on a platform that is dependent upon that GPS receiver. The idea here is to provide a protected environment for that GPS or that position, navigational, and timing process within that mounted platform. We're also developing the DAP system, or the dismounted assured position, navigation, and timing system. Very similar attributes that we're looking for, but the idea there is we've restricted to maps by a swap. Size, weight, power restrictions. Why? The soldier carries this device. It's a lot easier to put anti-jam antennas and inertials in a mounted platform. Obviously, you're not going to stick that on a soldier's back. So the DAP system will be restricted to a smaller size with weight factor, but provide that same capability that you see elaborated here in the center of the slide. This is a fire target mission threat, so that people understand kind of every aspect of this process can be affected or is dependent on an aspect of position, navigation, and timing.
For a second, sir. What is the perceived method of deployment or distribution of the maps or staff? Is that every soldier at every platform? Is that certain soldiers in a particular ratio? How do you envision that to work?
Over time, it would be a one-for-one possible replacement for systems on the battlefield right now. But due to cost, due to restrictions, we focus on threat, potential areas, be that European theater, be it Pacific theater, be it somewhere else. So we will focus our efforts on the appropriate priorities set by G257 and FORSCOM to provide the right aspects going forward. We are still in the analysis phase work, but we are also in the dealing phase for some of these capabilities already. Going forward on the fire trace, you see on the top there, we're talking about the various systems that all depend on some form of position, navigation, and timing for that process. On the bottom, you see the fire's trace. Every one of these aspects has a potential GPS receiver in it. Fire's community has deliberate and dynamic fire's responsibilities. Deliberate as a pre-planned target. You can use a map, you can use a GPS position, but when your guns move, you got to know where they're at. You don't have an assured position, navigation, and timing aspect of that to ensure where they are. You may not hit that target. You may miss it better. And when you're in dynamic fire control, you're talking about reacting to an enemy threat. Yet it's a very dynamic responsibility requiring responses within seconds. Assured position, navigation, and timing is obviously key to that process. You can see in the center, those are representative samples right now of systems that are within the targeting process. One aspect of our combat arms that is highly dependent upon the GPS process and position, navigation, and timing. Here's an elaboration on the capability needs. I'll leave this up for a little bit to talk about some of the things that are on there. On this elaboration right now, this is a comprehensive decomposition of the required solution attributes. The functions are derived from performance parameters and key attributes determined through previous work conducted by my team, the APNT, CFT, and responsible stakeholders within the DoD community. The functions are directly related to that OV1 I showed you in the beginning. It talks about the key attributes, the joint capability of three constituent capabilities: position, navigation, and timing. P&T definition is on the top. It's defined as the ability to determine accurate and precise location, orientation, time, and course corrections anywhere in the battle space and provide timely and assured P&T services across the DoD enterprise. As you saw in the video, the requirement to have access to trusted P&T applies across the entire force. It's not just a BCT. It's for Army operations and anti-access area denial type operations. It's most critical for that BCT, our forces forward, to adequately adjust to the threat that's out there. And we are working through those capabilities at that time. The bottom of the chart talks about additional function of tactical resiliency. We want to make sure that these systems as we go forward are tactically resilient so that when we lose a component of APNT, we can go to other sources to provide that position, navigation, and timing solution. In other words, the idea is to go forward, assuring access, protection, and trust, and providing some tactical resiliency and the best capability over those soldiers as quickly as possible to counter a possible threat. We have to be ready for MultiDomain operations. So with that, I'd like to go into a little bit of discussion, just review very quickly. You understand, when you don't have GPS, you've got certain concerns that are important. Certain things will happen to you when you don't have the trust that you want. You think you're going one way. You think you're going one way, but you're not. It's not as simple as pulling that ball away and trying to run next to it. You thought you were picking that ball, and you're not able to do that. So without further ado, I'll open this up to questions, concerns, thoughts that you may have, or ideas that you have forward so we can talk a little bit deeper on our concerns and possible solutions that you may have thought of. Does anybody have any? Sure.
Sir, Lieutenant Colonel Ken Runter, 18th Airborne Corps Deputy G6. With your with the plans to increase the resiliency of GPS, are you tying into Galileo or even GLONASS or anything out in the Pacific that our partner nations are using so that we can access their functionality if ours is no longer available?
We are looking at that as a possibility. The issue there is that if we lose the system, we can obviously use partner